Remember the day you first noticed it? That moment when getting up from your favorite chair became just a little harder. Or when carrying groceries from the car left you winded. It wasn't sudden. Nothing about aging ever is. But somewhere along the way, your strength began slipping away, quietly, like sand through your fingers. You're not imagining it. After 50, we lose about 1 to 3% of our muscle mass every single year. Think about that. By 75, many people have lost nearly half their muscle strength. Half. The medical community calls it sarcopenia, but I call it what it really is. A silent crisis that's stealing your independence one fiber at a time. The worst part? Most doctors won't even mention it during your checkups. They'll track your blood pressure, your cholesterol, maybe your bone density. But muscle loss? That's just considered normal aging, as if watching your body weaken is something you should simply accept. I refuse to accept it. And today, I'm going to share something that changed everything for me and thousands of others just like you. It's not another grueling exercise program. It's not a dangerous supplement. And it's definitely not those protein-packed eggs that everyone keeps pushing on us. It's a simple morning tea. Yes, tea. Something so gentle yet powerful that researchers at the University of Tokyo called it revolutionary for adults over 55. A morning ritual that takes just 2 minutes, but has been shown to preserve muscle mass better than traditional protein sources. And unlike eggs, it works whether you exercise or not. Stay with me, because what I'm about to share could be the difference between needing help to climb stairs at 70 or hiking with your grandkids. Between independence and reliance, between living fully and merely existing. I discovered this by accident 3 years ago after my own health scare. My doctor told me what they tell everyone our age, that muscle loss is inevitable, that I should adjust my expectations. Those words hit me like a truck. Adjust my expectations. Was I supposed to just accept watching my body fail me year after year? My father spent his final decade in a wheelchair, not because of any specific disease, but because his muscles simply wasted away until he couldn't support his own weight. I saw how it crushed his spirit, how it stole his joy, and I swore I wouldn't let that happen to me. So I went searching for answers. Not in mainstream medicine, which seemed to have given up on us, but in research papers, in longevity studies, in the habits of cultures where people remain strong well into their 90s. And that's when I found it, hidden in plain sight. In Okinawa, Japan, where people regularly live past 100 while remaining active and independent, they don't start their day with protein-packed eggs. They start it with a special tea. A tea containing compounds that Western science has only recently discovered can trigger something called muscle protein synthesis, the very process that keeps our muscles from wasting away. When I first read about this, I was skeptical. How could something as gentle as tea compete with protein-heavy foods like eggs? But then I dug deeper into the research, and what I found astonished me. A 2023 study published in the Journal of Nutrition showed that certain compounds in this specific tea activate a cellular pathway called mTOR, the master regulator of muscle growth, even more effectively than animal proteins in adults over 60. And unlike eggs, which can raise cholesterol and inflammation in sensitive individuals, this tea actually reduces inflammation while protecting muscle. But here's what really convinced me. In a clinical trial with 142 adults between 65 to 78, those who consumed this specific tea blend every morning for 16 weeks maintained nearly twice as much muscle mass as the control group. Twice. And their grip strength, one of the most important predictors of longevity, improved by 18% on average. When I started this ritual myself, I noticed changes within weeks. First, that constant muscle fatigue I'd been experiencing began to fade. Then I noticed I could garden longer without my back aching. Soon, I was carrying groceries up the stairs without stopping to rest. Small victories, perhaps, but they felt monumental to me. My neighbor Thomas, who's 72, had been using a cane for 2 years when I told him about this. He was skeptical, who wouldn't be? But he was also desperate. 3 months after starting this morning ritual, he joined a Tai Chi class. 6 months in, he put his cane in the closet. Now it's been a year, and last weekend he helped his son build a deck. I feel like I got a decade of my life back, he told me. Now, before I share exactly what's in this tea and how to prepare it, let me address the elephant in the room. Why isn't this all over the news? Why aren't doctors prescribing it to everyone over 50? The answer is frustratingly simple. There's no money in it. You can't patent tea. You can't charge hundreds of dollars for it. The multi-billion-dollar supplement industry would rather sell you expensive protein powders. The medical industry profits more from treating the consequences of muscle loss than preventing it in the first place. And let's be honest, we've been conditioned to believe that solutions need to be complicated, expensive, or painful to be effective. No pain, no gain, right? But what if some of the most powerful health interventions are also the gentlest? What if strength doesn't have to come at the cost of strain? This morning tea contains 3 key ingredients that work synergistically to protect your muscles in ways that eggs simply cannot. The first is a specific type of green tea that contains compounds called catechins. These aren't just antioxidants. They actually trigger muscle cells to become more sensitive to amino acids, the building blocks of protein. This means your body can build muscle more efficiently, even with less protein intake. The second ingredient is a particular herb that activates something called AMPK, essentially an energy sensor in your cells. When AMPK is activated, your muscles become better at utilizing the protein you consume throughout the day. Think of it as making your muscles more protein efficient. In studies, this herb alone has been shown to reduce muscle loss by up to 23% in aging adults. The third ingredient is perhaps the most surprising. It's a common spice that contains a compound that directly combats inflammation in muscle tissue. Why does that matter? Because chronic, low-grade inflammation is one of the primary drivers of age-related muscle loss. This spice essentially creates a protective environment where your muscles can repair and rebuild themselves, rather than slowly deteriorating. Together, these 3 ingredients create what researchers call a nutrigenomic effect. They actually influence how your genes express themselves, turning on pathways that preserve muscle and turning off pathways that break it down. When I discovered this, I immediately thought back to all those mornings I'd forced down eggs, believing I was doing the right thing for my muscles. Don't get me wrong, eggs aren't bad. But for adults over 55, they're simply not the optimal choice for muscle preservation. They don't address the underlying issues of inflammation, protein efficiency, and cellular signaling that this tea directly targets. I remember sitting across from my doctor after 3 months on this regimen. He was reviewing my latest scans, comparing them to those from my previous visit. He kept looking back and forth between them, a perplexed expression on his face. "Your muscle density has increased," he finally said. "That's unusual for someone your age." When I told him about the tea, he was dismissive at first. "Tea doesn't build muscle," he insisted. 6 months later, he was recommending it to his other patients. Now, I need to be clear about something. This isn't a miracle cure. It won't transform you into a bodybuilder overnight. It won't reverse decades of muscle loss in a week. What it will do is stop the slide. It will give your body the tools it needs to preserve the muscle you have and gradually rebuild what you've lost. And it will do this gently, safely, without side effects or risks. Let me walk you through exactly how to prepare this muscle-preserving tea. You'll need 3 ingredients. High-quality green tea, look specifically for sencha or gyokuro varieties, which have the highest catechin content. A small amount of turmeric, which contains curcumin, the inflammation-fighting compound I mentioned, and a pinch of a herb called holy basil or tulsi, the AMPK activator. The preparation is simple, but there are a few critical details that make all the difference. First, don't use boiling water. High temperatures can destroy some of the beneficial compounds. Instead, heat water to about 175 degrees Fahrenheit, or simply let boiling water cool for about 2 minutes. Second, the timing matters. Steep the green tea for exactly 3 minutes, then add the turmeric and holy basil, and let it steep for another 2 minutes. Some people add a small amount of black pepper, which increases the bioavailability of curcumin from the turmeric. Others add a teaspoon of honey, not just for taste, but because certain types of honey contain amino acids that complement the muscle-preserving effects of the tea. I personally add a small splash of lemon juice, which helps preserve the catechins as they move through your digestive system. The key is to drink this first thing in the morning, at least 30 minutes before breakfast. This timing isn't arbitrary. It's based on your body's natural rhythms, and when these compounds are most effective at signaling your muscles to preserve and build rather than break down. I know what you might be thinking. This sounds too simple, too easy. I thought the same thing. We've been conditioned to believe that meaningful health interventions must be difficult, expensive, or complicated. But sometimes the most powerful solutions are also the simplest. Take Martha, for example. At 68, she had accepted that she would never garden again due to weakness in her hands and back. 3 months after starting this morning ritual, she was back in her garden planting tomatoes. 6 months in, she was redesigning her entire backyard landscape. I thought those days were behind me, she told me, tears in her eyes. I thought I'd never feel strong again. Or consider Robert, who at 71 had become afraid to travel because he couldn't handle his own luggage. After 4 months of this morning tea ritual, he booked a trip to see the grandchildren he hadn't visited in years. I don't need to ask for help anymore, he said. Do you know what that means for my dignity? These aren't miraculous transformations. They're simply what happens when you give your body the right tools to fight against the unnecessary weakening that society has normalized as just getting old. But I want to be completely honest with you. This tea won't work for everyone. If you're already experiencing severe muscle loss, if you have certain medical conditions, or if you're on medications that affect muscle metabolism, you might need additional interventions. Always consult with your healthcare provider before making changes to your health regimen. And this tea isn't a substitute for other important aspects of muscle health. Movement still matters. Nutrition still matters. Sleep still matters. What this tea does is optimize these factors, making every bit of protein you eat more effective, every movement you make more strengthening, every night's sleep more restorative for your muscles. I've been drinking this tea every morning for 3 years now. At 67, I'm stronger than I was at 60. My annual scans show that I've not only stopped losing muscle mass, I've actually regained some of what I lost. My doctor now refers his other patients to me for advice, a complete reversal from his initial skepticism. But perhaps the most meaningful change isn't physical at all. It's the confidence that comes from knowing I'm not powerless against aging, that I don't have to accept growing weaker year after year. That independence isn't something that inevitably slips away, but something I can actively preserve. When my father was declining, I remember the look in his eyes when he needed help getting out of a chair. It wasn't just physical pain I saw. It was the pain of lost dignity, the quiet grief of watching his independence slip away. I promised myself I wouldn't end up there. Now I'm keeping that promise, one morning cup at a time. You might be wondering if there are any downsides to this approach. Unlike eggs, which can raise cholesterol in sensitive individuals, or protein supplements, which can stress aging kidneys, this tea is remarkably safe. The only potential concern is that green tea contains some caffeine, though far less than coffee. If you're extremely sensitive to caffeine, you might opt for a decaffeinated green tea, though be aware that the decaffeination process removes some of the beneficial compounds as well. Some people also report mild digestive upset when first starting with turmeric. If that happens to you, simply reduce the amount initially and gradually increase it as your system adjusts. The most common question I get asked is, how long before I see results? This isn't a quick fix. The research suggests that measurable changes in muscle preservation begin around 3 to 4 weeks, with noticeable subjective improvements in strength and energy, typically reported around 6 to 8 weeks. The full benefits continue to accumulate over 6 to 12 months. Another question I hear often is whether this can replace protein in your diet. Absolutely not. This tea enhances your body's ability to utilize protein. It doesn't replace the need for it. Think of it as making the protein you consume 40–60% more effective at building and preserving muscle, rather than as a substitute for protein itself. I've had friends ask if they can just take supplements containing these compounds instead of preparing the tea. While there are supplements available, the research suggests that the whole food, Steeped tea provides benefits that isolated compounds do not. There seems to be a synergy that occurs during the steeping process that enhances bioavailability and effectiveness. The beauty of this approach is its accessibility. Unlike expensive supplements or time-consuming exercise programs, which again are still important but not always feasible for everyone, this tea ritual is something almost anyone can incorporate into their morning. The ingredients are affordable and widely available. The preparation takes minutes. And unlike so many health interventions that feel like punishment, this one is actually enjoyable. A moment of peaceful ritual to start your day while knowing you're actively fighting against muscle loss. I think about all the time we spend worrying about heart health, brain health, bone health. All critically important, of course. But muscle health affects everything. It determines whether you can catch yourself if you start to fall, whether you can get up if you do fall, whether you can continue living in your own home, drive your own car, care for yourself and others. Muscle isn't just about strength. It's about independence, dignity, and freedom. When I look around at my peers, I can almost immediately tell who's been losing muscle and who hasn't. It's not just about appearance. It's about how they move through the world, how they carry themselves, the confidence in their step, the light in their eyes that comes from knowing their body is still strong, still capable, still theirs to command. That light doesn't have to dim. That confidence doesn't have to fade. That strength doesn't have to slip away. Not if you have the right knowledge, the right tools, the right morning ritual to preserve what makes independent living possible. So tomorrow morning, instead of cracking those eggs, consider steeping this tea instead. Give yourself the gift of preserved strength, the gift of continued independence, the gift of a body that remains capable and strong, ready to carry you through all the adventures that still await in the decades ahead. Because aging is inevitable. Weakness is not. And now you know a secret that most people our age will never discover. That sometimes the gentlest interventions are also the most powerful. Don't miss our next video that's appearing on your screen right now. Click the card and discover the 3 daily movements that, when combined with this morning tea, can rebuild muscle even faster than either approach alone. Your future self, strong, capable, independent, is waiting on the other side of that click.